The nightlight was still on. It was a small thing, a plug-in, shaped like nothing in particular, white plastic gone slightly yellow at the edges. Earl had never mentioned it. She had brought it in the 3rd month, when he started getting up in the dark, and his left knee had stopped cooperating. She plugged it in near the baseboard on his side of the room, below the nightstand. He had not acknowledged it, and she had not expected him to. It was there. That was enough. 6 in the morning. The room smelled the way it always smelled at 6 medicated lotion, the eucalyptus oil she added to the humidifier each night before she settled in, and underneath both of those, something older. Something that belonged to the house itself. Wood smoke. Old paper. The smell of a man who had lived in the same rooms for 19 years and left something of himself in every one of them. She was standing at the foot of the bed. She had come in the way she always came in, quiet, no overhead light, just the nightlight and whatever came through the curtains. She had done this every morning for 3 years. The routine was so set in her body that she sometimes completed the first 3 steps before she was fully awake, crossed the threshold, checked the rise of his chest, moved to the foot of the bed. That morning she had crossed the threshold. She had checked. She stood at the foot of the bed and pulled the blanket up to his shoulders, the same gesture she made every night when she tucked him in, made now by reflex, before the rest of her had caught up to what her eyes were already telling her. Earl Whitfield was 83 years old. He had served 31 years as a postal carrier for the United States Postal Service. He had raised 1 son, mostly alone, after his wife left when the boy was 9. He had never remarried. He had retired at 62, bought a small vegetable garden kit from a hardware store, planted it in the backyard of a house he had lived in for 19 years, and harvested exactly 1 crop of tomatoes before his knees had made the bending impossible. He was not breathing. She pulled the blanket up anyway. She straightened it along his shoulder. Then she saw the envelope. It was on the nightstand, propped against the base of the lamp. White envelope, standard size. Her name on the front in blue ink, the letters large and slightly uneven, the way his handwriting had been for the last year and a half. She knew the handwriting without thinking about it. She knew the way he formed his capital G, the way he brought the loop too wide and had to correct it halfway through. She had watched him write things, grocery lists, mostly. In the early days when he still had energy for preferences. She did not touch the envelope. Outside, a garbage truck was working its way down the block. She could hear it, the hydraulics, the low mechanical grind, a pause, the grind again, moving from house to house, taking what needed to go. She stood there. After a moment, she went to the nightstand. She moved the water glass. It was still half full, which meant he had drunk from it in the night, which meant he had been up, which meant he had been awake, and she had not known, and she set the glass on the coaster, center, the way she always did. She picked up her phone. She dialed. Stay with me, what she does next is the part I'm still thinking about. Her name was Gloria Simmons. She was 47 years old. She lived in Mechanicsville, on the south side of Atlanta, in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor of a building that had been built in 1971 and had not had its water heater replaced since 2008. The water heater worked. She had learned not to expect it to work well. She had been a home health aide for 11 years. Before that, 2 years at a long-term care facility in East Point, and before that, 3 years of general nursing coursework at Atlanta Technical College, which she had not finished for reasons that had nothing to do with her ability to finish them. She drove a 2009 Honda Accord. The odometer read 214,000 miles. The air conditioning had stopped working 2 summers ago. A compressor issue, the mechanic said. And he quoted her a number she had written down and folded and put in the glove compartment and not looked at again. She had a small battery-powered fan, the kind with a flexible neck, clipped to the driver's side visor. In July and August, she kept a change of clothes in a bag in the back seat, because by the time she arrived anywhere in the summer, she needed them. She had been assigned to Earl Whitfield 3 years ago, through the agency. The intake coordinator had described the case as moderate complexity medication management, bathing assistance, meal preparation, some cognitive decline. The coordinator had not mentioned the nights. Earl had not told the agency about the nights because Earl did not discuss his nights with strangers, and as far as he was concerned, the agency was a stranger. The nights were not in the contract. She had learned about them in the 2nd month, when she arrived at 6 in the morning, and found him sitting in the hallway outside the bathroom in his pajamas, one hand on the wall, because his left knee had buckled in the dark and he had not wanted to call out. He had been sitting there for what he thought was about 45 minutes. He was not sure. She had helped him up. She had helped him back to bed. She had not said anything about what she was going to do differently, because she did not know yet what she was going to do differently. She went home that evening, and she sat at her kitchen table, and she thought about it. The next morning she arrived at 5:30 instead of 6. The morning after that, the same. Within 2 weeks, 5:30 had become her hour. 5:30, every morning except Sundays, which was her one day off. The agency still paid for 6 to 2. She had not mentioned the change. She made $18.25 an hour. The agency classified her as a home health aide. She had passed the licensed practical nursing boards 4 years earlier, and had never corrected them. Because correcting them would have required a reclassification conversation, she did not have the bandwidth to start, and because the work was the work regardless of what the line item said. 40 hours a week, sometimes 48 when Earl had a bad stretch. After taxes, after the $412 a month, she paid for health insurance, a catastrophic plan that covered the things that would kill her, and not much else. She cleared about $2,300 a month. Her daughter Simone was 19. Simone was in her second year at Georgia State, studying public health, on a partial scholarship that covered tuition and a portion of housing but left a gap. Gloria had calculated that gap once, early in Simone's first semester, and had not recalculated it since, because the number did not change and looking at it again served no purpose. $300 a month went to Simone. It came from the Friday paycheck, transferred the same day the check cleared, before anything else. Rent on the Mechanicsville apartment, $950. Car insurance, $114. Gas, groceries. The minimum payment on the one credit card she had carried a balance on since 2019, when her mother had her stroke, and Gloria had covered the gap in care costs for 6 weeks before Medicaid had processed the paperwork. After everything, about $240 a month. She had not been to a dentist in 4 years. The back left molar on the lower jaw, the second one from the end, had been giving her intermittent trouble since the previous winter. She had identified the tooth. She knew which one it was by how it felt when she pressed her tongue against it a certain way. She managed it with over-the-counter anti-inflammatory tablets, taken carefully, no more than the recommended dose, no more than 3 days running. She kept a small notebook in her left scrub's pocket. Not a phone, a physical notebook, composition style, the kind with the black and white marbled cover. 99 cents at the dollar store on Metropolitan Parkway. She bought them herself. The agency did not provide them and she had not asked the agency to. In the notebook, she kept Earl's daily observations. Appetite, what he ate, how much. Mobility, whether he had gone to the kitchen on his own, whether he had made it to the back porch. Pain, she did not ask him directly because he would not answer directly, but she noted the signs. The way he held his left arm when the shoulder was bad, the length of time he spent in the recliner versus the bed, whether he had slept in the afternoon, medication times, fluid intake. She noted these things in the morning and at midday and at the end of her shift. She had filled 9 notebooks across 3 years. They were at home in her apartment, in a box on the closet shelf in her bedroom, in chronological order. The agency had never asked to see them. She brought the same breakfast most mornings, 2 scrambled eggs, toast with butter, half a grapefruit, because in the first week she had asked him what he ate for breakfast before she had come, and he had said eggs most days, toast sometimes, grapefruit when he had it. She had started bringing grapefruit every day because, at his age and with his medications, the sugar in juice was a concern and the fiber in the whole fruit was not. He had not thanked her for this. He had eaten it every morning without comment, which she had taken to mean it was correct. Before she left each evening, she straightened the objects on his nightstand, the water glass on the coaster, centered. The book spine up at the same angle he had been reading Elmore Leonard, the early ones, working through them in order, though the last several months had slowed him considerably. The pill organizer facing out, so that when she checked it in the morning, she could confirm from the doorway whether he had taken the nighttime dose without crossing the room and disturbing him if he was still sleeping. She did this every night. She did not know she did it. She went home at 2 in the afternoon. She made dinner, usually something she could eat in portions across 2 or 3 days, because cooking every night was a use of time and energy she did not have in surplus. She called Simone on Sundays at 7. She slept from 9:30 to 4:45, because 4:45 gave her time to shower, to eat something small, to make the drive to Buckhead before 5:30. She had not taken a vacation day in 3 years. Home health aides working through the agency did not receive paid time off. A day off was a day without pay. In 11 years of this work, she had taken 11 sick days. She kept count, and each one of them had cost her the full day's wages, plus whatever she spent on the medication that got her functional enough to go back the next morning. She had not missed a day with Earl. Not one. On the mornings when she was not well, she assessed herself in the car before she got out. She ran through what she needed to do. She got out of the car. That was the system. That was all the system was: get out of the car. Everything else followed from that. Stay with me. What happens in that house across those 3 years? I need you to understand it before anything else. Her mother's name was Rosetta Simmons. Rosetta had worked as a hospital housekeeper for 22 years at Grady Memorial nights, 5 days a week, the shift that ran from 11 in the evening to 7 in the morning. She had worked that shift for so long that she had stopped being tired in the way most people understand tired. She had arrived somewhere past tired, somewhere that had become her baseline. She raised Gloria on that schedule. She was asleep when Gloria left for school, and awake when Gloria came home, and the hours between 3 and 7 in the afternoon, before Rosetta went to bed for the night, were the hours they had together. Rosetta spent some of those hours cooking, some of them helping with homework, and some of them doing what she called nothing, which meant sitting in the living room, not watching television, not reading, just sitting, because after 22 years of hospital floors, you learn to value the absence of things that needed to be done. She was not a woman who talked about values. She demonstrated them in small actions and expected them to be absorbed. Gloria was 11 when she found the watch. It was in the hospital parking lot, on a Thursday, waiting for her mother to finish the end of her shift. The watch was on the ground near the rear tire of a parked car, heavy, silver, analog face, initials engraved on the back. The initials were not the letters of anyone in Gloria's family. They were not the letters of anyone she knew. She picked it up and looked at it and understood that it was a good watch, the kind that cost more than she understood money to cost, and she put it in her jacket pocket and said nothing about it until they were in the car. Rosetta looked at the watch. She turned it over and read the initials. She handed it back. On the way out of the parking lot, she turned the car toward the hospital entrance. "I can go in with you," Gloria said. "You're going in with me," Rosetta said. They went to the security desk. Gloria handed the watch to the man behind the desk. He had a form to fill out. Rosetta stood and waited while he filled it out. Gloria stood next to her mother and waited. When they were back in the car, Gloria asked why they hadn't kept it. Rosetta drove for a moment before she answered. "You don't get to decide that someone else's thing is yours," she said, "just because they're not looking." She did not say anything else. She turned on the radio, the gospel station. She kept it on, and they drove home. The watch was never claimed. Gloria found this out 3 weeks later when she went back to the security desk and asked. The man looked it up in his log. Nobody had called about it, he said. Nobody had come in. She went back to the car and thought about that. About the watch sitting in the lost and found box, unclaimed. About whether that changed anything about what they had done. She decided it did not. She was 11 years old. It was not a complicated decision. It just required that she let it be as simple as it actually was. This is what her mother had given her. Not a lecture, not a speech. A 40-minute round trip to a security desk, on a Thursday, after the end of a long night shift, because a thing that was not theirs needed to be returned to the place where its owner might look for it. Gloria had carried this understanding the way you carry something set in you early enough that you no longer notice it as a separate thing. It was just part of how she moved through rooms, how she made decisions at the moments when a decision was required. 36 years after that Thursday, she was standing in an old man's bedroom at 6 in the morning, and there was an envelope on the nightstand with her name on it, and the envelope was not hers. She knew this without having to think about it. It took her a moment. She stood there longer than she would have expected, the garbage truck outside making its slow way down the block, but she knew it. She called the agency. She called 911. She stood in the hallway outside Earl's bedroom and waited for what needed to happen next to happen. She did not touch the envelope. She had passed her licensed practical nursing boards in March of 2020. She was 41 years old. She had been studying for 11 months after Earl was settled for the night. In the 2 hours between 2 in the afternoon and when she needed to sleep, on her Sundays off, she used library books and a prep course she found online, the kind that cost $39 for 3 months of access, which she paid for on the credit card. The exam was on a Tuesday. She drove herself. She sat in the testing center parking lot for 6 minutes before she went in. She had done the practice exams enough times that she knew her scores, and her scores were good, and she had still sat in the parking lot for 6 minutes. She passed. The clinic in Smyrna called 2 weeks later. They had received her application she had submitted it the previous fall, before the exam, on the assumption that she would pass and that she should be ready. The position was for a licensed practical nurse at a family medicine practice. The pay was $22 an hour. Benefits included health insurance, real health insurance, not the catastrophic coverage she was carrying. Paid time off, a retirement contribution. She had driven out to Smyrna on a Saturday to look at the building. She had not told anyone she was doing this. She sat in the parking lot of the clinic for a while, a low brick building, well-maintained, a small fountain near the entrance that was running, and she had thought about what it would look like to walk in there on a Monday morning, to have that be the thing. Then Rosetta had the stroke. It was on a Sunday, the Sunday after the clinic called. Gloria was at home. It was her day off when her phone rang, and the voice on the other end was her mother's neighbor, a woman named Hazel, who said she was sorry to call, but Rosetta was on the floor in the kitchen, and the paramedics were there, and Gloria needed to come. She drove to Grady. Rosetta was stable by the time she arrived. Left side weakness, some speech. The doctors were cautious with their language, which meant the prognosis was complicated, which meant care was going to be required, and the care was going to require money and consistency, and someone whose schedule could accommodate what Rosetta's needs would be. Gloria called the clinic in Smyrna the following Tuesday. She told them she needed to withdraw her application. The woman on the phone was kind about it. She said the position would likely come open again and she could keep Gloria's materials on file. Gloria thanked her. She hung up. She did not call back. She kept her license current. Every 2 years, the renewal fee and the continuing education hours. She did it online, in the evenings, because it cost $47 to let a license lapse, and she was not willing to pay for that. The license was in her nightstand drawer at home, in a folder with her Social Security card and the title to the accord. She had not looked at it in months. She knew it was there. For the next 2 years, she managed Rosetta's care, coordinating the home health aides, covering the gaps, driving her mother to appointments, managing the Medicaid paperwork, which was a job unto itself, the kind that did not end and did not pay. Rosetta improved slowly. By the time Rosetta was stable enough to require less of her, Gloria was fully into her 3rd year with Earl, and Earl was declining in ways the agency's intake coordinator had not accounted for. She did not reassess. She was already there. She kept going. Simone was 17 when her grandmother had the stroke. She knew that something had changed in the household, in the money, in her mother's availability. She did not ask specifics, because she had grown up understanding that certain things were managed quietly, and she could either help or stay out of the way. And until she was old enough to help, she stayed out of the way. When she got the partial scholarship to Georgia State, she came home and told her mother and her grandmother in the same afternoon, and Rosetta had cried, and Gloria had not, but Gloria had sat very still for a long time after, which Simone recognized as its own kind of thing. Simone kept a photograph of Rosetta on her dorm room desk, tucked under the bottom corner of her laptop. Not framed, just there. In the photo, Rosetta was wearing a yellow dress and standing in the backyard of the house where Gloria had grown up, holding a watering can. It was taken before the stroke. Rosetta was laughing at something happening off to the left of the frame, something that had been lost to the photograph. Simone called her mother every Sunday at 7. If Gloria did not pick up within 2 rings, Simone called back immediately. Gloria always picked up on the first ring. They talked about Simone's week, the coursework, the study group, the professor who assigned too much and explained too little. They talked about Rosetta, who was living now at a care facility in Decatur, and who had good days and difficult days in a pattern that had become familiar enough that they could discuss it without the same weight it had once carried. They did not talk about money, not because Simone did not understand that money was a factor she understood, but there was nothing to be done about it from a dormitory room in Atlanta, and her mother did not discuss problems that had no solution available, and Simone had learned not to push. After they hung up, Gloria sat at the kitchen table, both hands flat on the table surface. Then she got up. Marcus Whitfield was 51 years old. He ran Whitfield Development Group out of an office on the 14th floor of a building in Midtown. The company had 9 employees, 4 active projects in various stages of permitting and development, and a reputation for completing mixed-use redevelopments in neighborhoods where other developers had stalled. He had built the company over 16 years. Starting with a single property in Kirkwood that he had bought with money he had saved working in commercial real estate, and money he had borrowed from 2 people who believed he would pay them back. He had paid them back. He had bought a second property, and a third, and eventually the properties had become projects, and the projects had become a company, and the company had become the thing his life was organized around, because he was good at it, and because he worked better when he had something large and complicated to work on. He had not thought of this as a trade-off. It was just how he was built. His father Earl had been a postal carrier for 31 years. Marcus had grown up watching his father leave the house at 6 in the morning and return at 3 in the afternoon, 6 days a week, every week, for as long as Marcus could remember. He had watched his father put on the uniform, the light blue shirt, the dark pants, the shoes he polished on Sunday evenings with a cloth and a small tin of black polish, with the same attention each time, not ceremony, just care. Earl did not do things carelessly. When Marcus made his first significant amount of money enough to make a choice that was not about survival, he had bought his father a house, a 4-bedroom in Buckhead, more space than Earl needed, in a neighborhood Earl had delivered mail to for 20 years, but never lived in. He had sat across from his father at Earl's kitchen table in the old apartment in Vine City and slid the folder across. Earl had looked at the folder. He had looked at Marcus. He said he didn't need a new house. Marcus said he knew that. He said he wanted to do it. Earl was quiet for a moment. Then he said thank you. He took the folder. He moved into the Buckhead house 8 months later, after Marcus had had it repainted and the kitchen updated and the front porch rebuilt. He called Marcus to say he had arrived. He said the house was nice. He said thank you again. Then the conversation had moved on, the way conversations with Earl always moved on, because Earl did not dwell on things. Marcus had interpreted this as contentment. He had interpreted the brevity as satisfaction. He had told himself that his father was not a demonstrative man, and that the thank you was the whole of what Earl had to say about it, and that the house itself, the space, the neighborhood, the porch was doing the speaking for him. He had been wrong about this, but he did not know it yet. He paid the home health agency invoice on the 1st of every month, $2,340, a negotiated flat rate that covered 40 hours weekly, a coordinator call if something changed, and a quarterly assessment. He had set the payment up on automatic transfer the month after he arranged the care, and he had not looked at the line item since except when his accountant mentioned it. He had met Gloria 3 times. The first time was at the agency intake, when he came to sign the initial paperwork. She had been in the waiting area in her scrubs, and the coordinator had introduced them. He remembered that she was professional. He remembered that she asked specific questions about Earl's medications and his sleep habits, and that the questions were good ones, better than the ones the coordinator had asked. He had answered them. She had written something in a small notebook. The second time was 6 weeks later, when he stopped by the house on a Saturday to check on his father. Gloria was in the kitchen when he arrived. Earl was on the back porch. They had exchanged a few words. She had told him that Earl had been having some trouble with his appetite in the mornings, but that it had leveled off, and that the physical therapist's recommendation about the shower chair had helped. He had nodded. He had thanked her. He had gone out to the back porch to see his father. The third time was 18 months into the arrangement, when Earl had a fall. Marcus had gotten the call from the agency at 11 in the morning. Earl had slipped getting out of bed and gone down, no serious injury, but the agency required notification and a family member's confirmation that additional precautions had been discussed. He had driven to the house that afternoon. Gloria was there. Earl was in the recliner in the living room with his left ankle wrapped, fine, irritated about the fuss, telling Marcus he didn't need to have come. Gloria had given him the summary. How the fall happened, what she had assessed, what she had recommended to the agency. She was precise. She did not editorialize. When Marcus asked if there was anything else he should know, she had said that Earl's sleep was irregular, and that the nights were harder than his father let on, and that she had adjusted her hours to accommodate that. Marcus had looked at her. He had not known about the adjusted hours. The agency had not mentioned it. He did not know, at that moment, that she was arriving at 5:30 on her own time and without additional compensation. He did not ask. He thanked her and drove back to Midtown. He had been to the house 7 times in the last year, sometimes less. There was always something in motion at the company, a permitting delay, a financing structure that needed restructuring, a contractor who had gone quiet on a timeline. He told himself his father had professional care. He told himself that was responsible. He told himself Earl was not a man who wanted to be hovered over. Some of this was true. Earl was not a man who wanted to be hovered over. Earl would have told him so directly if he had been. But there was a conversation his father had never started and Marcus had never started, and the space where that conversation would have been had just grown larger and larger over the years until it was too large to enter without feeling the size of it, and so neither of them had entered it. Marcus visited on holidays. He brought food, he kissed his father on the forehead, and said he'd be back soon, and drove back across town. On an evening in January, 2 years before Earl's death, he had stayed overnight. Earl had had a difficult week, a respiratory thing that had resolved, but had left him slower, more fatigued. Marcus had come on a Friday evening and had decided, standing in the kitchen eating takeout he had brought from a restaurant on Peachtree, to stay. Earl had gone to bed at 8:30. Marcus had made up the couch. He woke at 3:30 in the morning. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that is only possible in neighborhoods where there are backyards and trees, where the street noise settles after midnight. He lay on the couch for a moment, adjusting. Then he heard his father moving in the bedroom. The soft shift of weight on the mattress. A sound that might have been his father's knee, that muffled complaint Earl's left knee made when he put weight on it wrong. Marcus lay on the couch. He was tired. He had driven across town twice that day. He had had a difficult week at the company. He told himself his father was fine. He told himself Earl moved in the night sometimes, and it was not always an emergency. He told himself Gloria would be there in the morning. He went back to sleep. It was a Sunday, Gloria's night off. He had not known that. He had assumed, when he fell asleep on the couch, that the arrangement covered all nights. He had not thought to ask. He found out later, months later, during a quarterly call with the agency coordinator, that the arrangement was 5 nights, Sunday excluded. The agency had assumed the family covered Sunday. Marcus had assumed the agency covered Sunday. Nobody had asked Earl what happened on Sunday nights because Earl would not have said. Marcus had arranged immediately for Sunday coverage through the agency. He had not told his father. He had not told Gloria. He had filed it under things he had handled. What he had not done, and what he could not undo, was get up off the couch. He did not know, lying there that night, that it was the last time he would stay overnight at his father's house. He did not know this was the last year. He could not have known. But he had heard his father moving in the dark, and he had not gotten up, and that fact was in him now in a way it had not been before, and he did not know yet what it was going to cost him to carry it. The agency supervisor arrived at 9 in the morning. Her name was Deneen. She was a practical woman in her mid-40s, who had been doing this work long enough to have seen every variation of this situation, and she had the calm of a person who has needed to be calm for others in rooms like this more times than she cared to count. She and Gloria went through the necessary steps. Gloria gave her the information she needed. She was precise about times, about what she had found and when, about what she had done and in what order. Deneen wrote things down. At some point, Deneen said that she was sorry about Mr. Whitfield. She meant it. Gloria heard that she meant it. He was a good man, Gloria said. It was the most she said. She stayed. The funeral home sent someone. There were forms. There were calls. The neighbor across the street, an older man who had known Earl for 15 years, came to the front door and was told and stood there for a moment before he nodded once and went back across the street. The morning went by. The envelope was still on the nightstand. She had not gone back into the bedroom after the first calls were made. The bed had been attended to by the funeral home by mid-morning. The room was as she had left it, water glass on the coaster, book at its angle, pill organizer facing out, the nightlight still glowing near the baseboard. She had straightened the nightstand objects before the funeral home arrived. Before anyone else came into the room, she had done it the way she always did it, without thinking about it, because that was the system. And the system did not stop because of what had happened. At 11:15, with Deneen in the living room making calls, Gloria went back to the bedroom. The envelope was where she had left it. She stood at the nightstand. She looked at her name in his handwriting, the G too wide in its loop, the correction he always made halfway through. She picked it up. It was light. Whatever was inside, it was not thick. She pressed it lightly between her fingers. She was not opening it, just understanding its dimensions. Something flat. Paper, most likely. Folded. She put it in her bag. She stood there for another moment. In the hallway she could hear Deneen on the phone. She took the envelope back out of her bag. She set it on the nightstand, where she had found it. She straightened it so the bottom edge was parallel with the edge of the nightstand, the way she always straightened things. She went back to the living room. She sat down in the chair near the window, not the recliner, which was Earl's, which she had never sat in, and she waited. Marcus Whitfield arrived at 11:40. She heard his car in the driveway, before she heard the door. He came in still wearing his coat. Deneen met him in the entryway. They spoke for a moment, low, then he came into the living room. Gloria stood up. "I'm sorry," she said. He nodded. She reached into her bag and took out the envelope. "He left this on the nightstand," she said. "I didn't open it." He took it. He looked at the front. Her name, not his. "You didn't open it," he said. "It's not mine to open," she said. He was quiet. Deneen had stepped into the hallway. Marcus held the envelope. Then he looked at her. "Will you stay," he said, "while I read it?" She sat back down. He did not open it immediately. He sat in the recliner, his father's chair, where his father had spent the last year's good hours reading the Elmore Leonard novels, and he held the envelope, and for a long moment, he was not reading anything. Gloria sat in the chair by the window. Outside, a car passed. The garbage truck was gone now, finished with the block, working its way to the next street over. The house was quiet in the way. Houses are quiet when the person who lived in them is no longer there. Marcus opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded in thirds. He unfolded it. Earl's handwriting. Blue ink. The large, uneven letters of a man whose hands had not cooperated well for the last year. 3 lines. Short lines. The handwriting took up about the top third of the page. Below it, the rest of the page was blank. Marcus read it. He read it again. In the driveway, a car door closed. Someone's radio played for a few seconds and then went quiet. Marcus folded the note along its original crease. He held it in both hands, folded, and did not look up. Gloria waited. He looked up. He held the note out to her. She took it. She unfolded it. 3 lines. "The nights I couldn't sleep, she stayed." She didn't talk. She just stayed. "That's the thing I want you to know about her." She read it once. She read it again. She folded it along the crease. Outside, the neighbor's sprinkler came on. She could hear the soft percussion of it against the pavement. She held the note in her lap. Neither of them spoke for a while. Marcus was looking at his father's recliner the way you look at a thing that has become, in the last hour, an entirely different object. The armrests were worn at the outside edges. She had noticed this months ago. The way the fabric had softened and flattened from the pressure of a man sitting in the same position for years. She had meant to mention it to the agency. She had not mentioned it. There was something she had observed about Marcus Whitfield across the 3 years she had worked for his father. She had not articulated it to herself in any formal way, because she did not make a habit of articulating things about clients' families. But it was there, in the record of her observations, in the things she had written in the small notebooks. She had noted, in the first year, that Mr. Whitfield, she always referred to Earl as Mr. Whitfield in the notebooks, because he had introduced himself that way, and she had honored it, that Mr. Whitfield's best hours were in the morning, before 9, and that those were the hours when he was most likely to talk. Not to her, particularly. He was not a man who had a strong preference for conversation, but he would sit in the kitchen while she made breakfast, and there would be a willingness in his quiet, an openness, that was different from the rest of the day. In those hours, sometimes, he talked about Marcus. He did not complain about his son. Earl Whitfield was not a man who complained about anything, and she suspected he would have been especially unwilling to complain about his son to a near stranger. But he mentioned him. He mentioned specific things, a project Marcus had told him about, something Marcus had said on the last visit, a photograph Marcus had sent on his phone that Earl had needed help opening. He said these things in the same flat tone he said everything, which meant that if you were not paying attention, you might have assumed he was simply relaying information. She had been paying attention for 3 years. She knew that when Earl mentioned his son in those morning hours, he was not simply relaying information. He was keeping Marcus present in the room. She had not said this to Earl. She had not said it to anyone. She had written it in the 7th notebook, in a single line, without embellishment, the way she wrote everything. Now she was sitting in Earl's living room with his note in her hands, and Marcus was sitting in Earl's recliner, and she understood that she knew things about his father that he did not know, and that he was sitting 4 feet away from her, trying to account for what 3 lines of handwriting had just told him. "He used to talk about you in the mornings," she said. Marcus looked at her. "Not a lot. He'd mentioned something you'd told him, something you were building." She paused. "He kept track of what you were building." Marcus did not say anything. "He showed me a picture once, a rendering you'd sent him, one of the old 4th Ward projects. He said you'd sent it so he could see what it looked like before it was done." She stopped. She was not telling him this to make him feel better. She was telling him because it was accurate, and because he was trying to understand his father, and she had information his father had not found a way to give him. "He had opinions about it," she said. "He thought the corner entrance made more sense than the side entrance. He was very specific about the corner entrance." Marcus looked at the recliner arms. He rubbed one thumb along the worn edge. "He never told me that," he said. "No," she said. They sat. "The nights," Marcus said. "When he couldn't sleep." She waited. "Did he talk then? During those hours?" "Sometimes," she said. "Not always. He didn't need to." She thought for a moment about how to say the next part. "Some nights he just wanted the lamp on in the hall. He could see it from the bed. That was enough." Marcus was quiet. She thought about the night in January, 2 years ago, the night she had not been there. She did not know exactly what had happened. She knew only that when she had arrived the following Monday morning, Mr. Whitfield had been more fatigued than the previous week, and had not wanted to explain it, and she had noted it in the notebook and moved on. She did not mention this to Marcus. It was not hers to give him. He had to carry what he carried. She could not sort it for him. He was specific about what mattered to him, she said. He was very clear, in his way. Marcus nodded slowly. He was not disagreeing. He stood up. He was taller than she had registered. He had his father's height, though Earl's had compressed over the years. He went to the window and stood there, not looking at anything in particular outside, just standing the way people stand when the room they're in has become too small for what's in it. She gave him the silence. After a while, he turned. "The envelope," he said. "You said you found it on the nightstand." "Yes." "You didn't open it." He said it again, not as a question this time, processing it again. "It had your name on it," he said. "I know," she said. He looked at her. "Why didn't you open it?" She held the note. "It's not mine to open," she said again, the same words. Quiet, direct, no explanation attached. He held her gaze for a moment. Outside, the sprinkler went through its cycle and stopped. She held out the note. He looked at it for a moment. Then he shook his head. "Keep it," he said. She folded it. She put it in her bag. Deneen came back in from the hallway. There were things that needed to be done, paperwork, arrangements, calls. The morning had not waited. Gloria stood and gathered her things. She told Deneen she would be available for whatever the agency needed in terms of transition documentation. She thanked Marcus and told him she was sorry again, simply, without weight. She went to the entryway. Earl's hunting coat was on the hook by the door. Olive green canvas, worn at the elbows, shoulders gone soft with age. She had dusted the shoulders every week when she cleaned. She had never moved it. She did not touch it now. She went out. She pulled the door shut behind her. She sat in her car for a moment. The fan on the visor was off. The morning was cool enough. October in Atlanta. She started the engine and pulled out of the driveway. The drive from Buckhead to Mechanicsville took 43 minutes that morning. She did not listen to the radio. She went through the steps of the day, what she would do when she got home, what needed to be handled. When she needed to call the agency about her caseload, the agency would assign her to new clients. That was the procedure. She had been through transitions before. She made herself dinner. She cleaned the kitchen. She sat at the table with her hands flat on the surface, the way she did after she hung up with Simone on Sundays. She sat there for longer than usual. Then she got up. She called the agency at 4 the next afternoon. They told her they were sorry about Mr. Whitfield. They said her next assignment was being finalized and they would have something for her within the week. She thanked them and hung up. She did not call Simone that evening. She called on Sunday, as she always did, and Simone asked how she was, and she said fine, quiet, long. Simone told her about a study group session that had gone better than expected, about a professor who had finally given clearer guidance on the final paper. "How's your week been?" Simone asked. "Long," Gloria said. "You sound tired." "I'm okay." After she hung up, she went to her bedroom. She opened the nightstand drawer. The folder was there, her social security card, the title to the accord, the licensed practical nursing license she renewed every 2 years without fail. She took the license out and looked at it. Her name, her photograph, the state seal, the expiration date. She put it back. She closed the drawer. She went to bed at 9:30. 4 days after Earl's funeral, which she did not attend because she had not been invited and had not expected to be, Marcus Whitfield called the home health agency. He reached a coordinator named Philip, who handled the administrative side of the client relations. Marcus asked what level of certification Gloria Simmons held. Philip pulled her file. He told Marcus she was certified as a home health aide. Marcus asked whether she held any additional credentials. Philip checked the file. He told him she held a license as a licensed practical nurse, Georgia board, current and in good standing. Marcus asked why she was classified as a home health aide. Philip explained that the original contract had been drawn up as a home health services agreement and that the classification reflected the contract terms. Marcus asked what the reclassification process was. Philip explained it. It required a formal request, a review by the agency's nursing coordinator, and an adjustment to the billing structure. Marcus said he wanted to initiate the process. Philip said he would send the forms. Marcus filled out the forms that afternoon. He submitted them the same day. He did not tell the agency why he was requesting the change. He did not call Gloria. He did not write a note or make a gesture. He submitted the paperwork and went back to the permitting delay on the old 4th Ward project, which had been sitting on his desk for 3 days. Outside his office window, 14 floors down, a postal truck was double parked on the street. He could see it from his desk. It sat there for a while, flashers going, and then it pulled out and was gone. 3 weeks later, on a Friday, Gloria's paycheck came through the agency's electronic payment system. She checked it in her car, before she started the engine, the way she always did. The amount was different. She looked at it. She checked the date, the period covered, the hours logged. The hours were the same. The rate was different, $26.50 an hour, classified under licensed practical nursing services. She sat with this for a moment. She did not know why. She did not know who. She put the paycheck in her bag, the same bag where Earl's note had ridden home from Buckhead 3 weeks before. She would find out eventually. The agency would tell her, when she asked, that a family member had requested the reclassification. They would not tell her which family member. She would not push further. She started the engine. She pulled out of the parking lot. The fan on the visor had been running the whole time. She reached up and clicked it off. The weather had cooled in the last few weeks. October giving way to November, the mornings requiring a jacket now. She didn't need it today. She drove south on the highway. She had an 11 o'clock start at a new client's house, a woman in Edgewood, 74 years old, post-surgical care following a hip replacement. The agency had sent her the intake summary the day before. She had read it twice and made notes in a new composition notebook, the 10th one, 99 cents, from the dollar store on Metropolitan Parkway. The Edgewood house was a yellow Craftsman on a tree-lined street. She parked in front. She sat for a moment, looking at the house. Then she got out of the car. She had not met this client yet. She would introduce herself. She would ask specific questions, sleep habits, pain levels, what the client ate for breakfast before all of this. She would write the answers in the notebook in her left scrubs pocket. She would be there at 5:30 the next morning. Because the first few days after a hip replacement were when people tried to get up on their own and discovered that their body had a different opinion than their intentions. She went up the front walk. The client's daughter answered the door, a woman in her late 40s, still in her work clothes, who had driven over on her lunch break to be there for the first day. She looked tired. She looked like someone trying to figure out how all of this was going to work. Gloria introduced herself. The daughter shook her hand. She led Gloria into the house. The client was in a hospital bed that had been set up in the dining room, a practical choice, because it kept her on the ground floor and near the kitchen. She was a small woman, with the alertness that sometimes belongs to people who have been confined to bed and are waiting for someone competent to arrive. She looked at Gloria with the deliberate assessment of someone who has been poked and managed by too many strangers recently and has developed opinions about which strangers she is willing to be poked by. "You're my new nurse?" the client said. "Home health aide," Gloria said. "I was told you have a nursing license." Gloria looked at her. "I do." "Good," the client said. "Then sit down and tell me why my left ankle is swollen when the surgery was on my right hip." Gloria pulled the chair to the bedside. She sat down. She took the notebook out of her left pocket. The daughter had stepped back into the hallway on her phone. Through the window, a dog in the neighbor's yard was conducting an argument with something along the fence line. "How long has it been swollen?" Gloria asked. 2 days. The hospital said it was normal." "I don't think it's normal." "Walk me through it," Gloria said. She opened the notebook. She picked up her pen. The visit was scheduled for 2 hours. She stayed 4. Her next shift at the Edgewood house started at 5:30 in the morning. She had told no one this. She arrived 12 minutes early. The street was dark. She sat in the car until 5:30 exactly, then gathered her bag and went to the door. The daughter had left a key under a brick near the left side of the front step. Gloria had asked her to the previous afternoon before she left. She let herself in. The house was quiet. The downstairs nightlight was on. She went to the dining room. The client was sleeping. Her breathing was even. Gloria stood in the doorway for a moment, then went to the kitchen and started coffee. At 6, the client woke and called out. Not in distress, just awake, the way people wake in new circumstances, needing to confirm the situation. "I'm here," Gloria said, from the kitchen. "A pause." "Good," the client said. Gloria brought the coffee. She helped the client sit up. She checked the ankle, still slightly swollen, but better than yesterday. She had made a note about elevation and had suggested it before she left, and the daughter had apparently passed it along. She made her morning notes in the notebook. The client was named Paulette. She had 2 daughters and a son, and the son lived in Charlotte, and the daughters lived nearby. And the one who had been there yesterday, the one in the work clothes, was named Renata, and Renata was the one who had made all the arrangements. Paulette told her this matter-of-factly. "The way you give someone information they will need to work effectively in your life." "And you live alone," Gloria said. "Have for 11 years, Paulette said, "since Henry passed. I don't have trouble with it. Do you want the television on?" "Not yet. Talk to me." Gloria set down the notebook. She looked at Paulette. "What do you want to talk about?" "Whatever you want," Paulette said. "You've been doing this a while. You must have things you've observed." Gloria thought about this. "I've observed that people heal better when they're not bored," she said. Paulette laughed a short laugh, surprised out of her. "That's true," she said. "What else?" "I've observed that the swelling in your ankle is probably from sitting still yesterday afternoon. If you get more movement today, even just the exercises the hospital gave you, it'll improve." "And what else?" Paulette said. She was enjoying this. She was a woman who had opinions and had been surrounded, for the last 5 days, by professionals who did not ask what she thought. "I'll think on it," Gloria said. "You do your exercises first." Paulette did her exercises. She complained about them precisely as much as was reasonable and not a syllable more, which Gloria noted in her assessment of Paulette's character and filed accordingly. At 11, the daughter Renata came by on her lunch break again. She thanked Gloria. She asked how the morning had gone. Gloria gave her a clear summary. The ankle, the exercises, the plan for the afternoon. Renata wrote some of it down on her phone. Before Renata left, she paused in the entryway. "My mother said you're easy to talk to," Renata said. Gloria picked up her bag. "That's good to hear. She said you didn't talk down to her. Your mother is not a person you talk down to." Renata smiled. She left. Gloria went back to the dining room. Paulette was resting, not asleep. In the alert stillness she seemed to prefer awake and quiet, watching the light come through the window. "You have children?" Paulette asked. "One daughter. She's in college." "What's she studying?" "Public health." Paulette was quiet for a moment, looking at the window. "That's a good thing to study," she said. Gloria sat in the chair by the bed. She had 4 more hours on the shift. "It is," she said. She was at the Edgewood house for 3 weeks before the first paycheck under the new rate came through. By then she had a good understanding of Paulette's sleep, her pain patterns, what she would eat without complaint and what required negotiation, and whether the swelling in the left ankle was resolving. It was, slowly. She had started a second notebook. The morning the check came in, she was sitting in her car outside the Edgewood house at 5:18, waiting for 5:30. She checked it the way she always did. She saw the amount. She held her phone for a moment. $26.50 an hour. 40 hours. The math was different. Not by a large amount. It did not solve everything. It was not built to solve everything. Nothing was, but it was different. The number on the other end of the month's calculation was different. She put her phone in her bag. She thought about calling Simone. She did not call Simone. Not yet. She wanted to understand it more clearly first, what it was, what it wasn't, whether it was stable. She would wait. She sat with it for a few minutes. The street was quiet. The last of the night was going. She could see, at the end of the block, the sky beginning to sort itself, the early light that belongs to November mornings in Georgia, thin and clear, not the heavy gold of summer, but something sparser, something that gives you the shape of things without much color yet. She thought about Earl Whitfield. She thought about his handwriting, the way the G always went too wide. She thought about his opinion on the corner entrance, the rendering Marcus had sent him, the thoughts he had had about it and never shared. She thought about the nightlight, still on in his room when she had arrived that morning. She thought about her mother, returning a watch to a security desk at 7 in the morning after a long night shift, the 40-minute round trip, the radio on in the car afterward, the gospel station, the drive home. You don't get to decide that someone else's thing is yours, just because they're not looking. She did not know yet that it was Marcus who had made the call. She would find out later. But sitting in her car on that November morning, she knew that whatever it was, it had come from somewhere, and that she had not been the one to ask for it, which meant it counted differently than if she had. She was not sure she had a word for what it counted as. She sat with it the way she sat with most things, directly, without looking away, without needing it to be more or less than it was. At 5:30 exactly, she got out of the car. She let herself in with the key under the brick. The nightlight was on in the hallway. The house was quiet. She went to the dining room. She stood in the doorway. Paulette was sleeping. Her breathing was even. Gloria set her bag down quietly. She went to the nightstand, the one that had been brought in with the hospital bed, a small pressboard thing the equipment company had delivered, and she straightened what was on it. The water glass on its coaster, the remote for the television angled correctly, the pill organizer facing out. She did not know she was doing it. She never had. She picked up her bag. She went to the kitchen and started the coffee. It would be ready before Paulette woke. That was how it worked. That was the whole of the system: arrive before it was needed, so that when it was needed, it was already there. 3 months into the Edgewood assignment, on a Tuesday morning in January, she arrived at 4:47 to find that the key was not under the brick. She stood on the front step. She looked at the space under the brick. The brick was there, but no key beneath it. She checked the time. It was 4:47. The morning was cold, the dry cold of Atlanta winters that surprises people who have not experienced it. She called Renata. Renata picked up on the third ring, groggy, panicked immediately when she understood who was calling and what time it was. "Mama probably moved it," Renata said. "I thought that might be the case," Gloria said. "I just wanted to check before I—" "She does that. She moves things." She thinks Renata stopped. "Is she okay? Is she?" "I'm outside," Gloria said. "I haven't been in yet. I'm calling you first." A pause while Renata absorbed this. "I'm going to try the window around back," Gloria said. "She told me last week she keeps the latch loose." "Is that—" "Yes," Renata said. "Go. Call me when you're in." The window was loose. Gloria got in. She went to the dining room. Paulette was awake. She had been awake for a while. She had the television on. A low murmur, the kind she kept it at in the hours before anyone was supposed to arrive. She looked at Gloria in the doorway. "You came in the window," Paulette said. "I did. I moved the key." "I know." Paulette was quiet. She picked up the remote and turned the television off. "I didn't want you to not be able to get in," Paulette said. "Then, I moved it to the planter by the door. I thought that was more sensible." "It is more sensible," Gloria said. "I should have told Renata." "I'll tell Renata." Paulette nodded. She settled back against her pillow. "Did you worry?" Paulette asked. "When the key wasn't there?" "A little," Gloria said. "Not a lot." "Why not a lot?" Gloria thought about this. "Because you're a practical woman," she said, "and I've been doing this long enough to know the difference between something practical happening and something else." Paulette looked at her. "That's either very reassuring or very clinical," Paulette said. "A little of both," Gloria said. Paulette laughed. It was the good laugh, not the surprised one, but the one that comes from finding something genuinely funny when you weren't expecting to. Gloria called Renata. She told her everything was fine. She told her about the planter. Then she started the coffee, and she went back to the dining room, and she sat in the chair by the bed, and she took the notebook from her left scrub's pocket, and she opened it to where she had left off. Outside, the street was waking up. A car passed. The neighbor's dog began its morning commentary from the backyard. Paulette had her eyes closed, but she was not sleeping. "You'll be back tomorrow?" she said. 5:30, Gloria said. "Good," Paulette said. She closed the notebook. She did not need to write that down. She would remember it. It was a Friday in February, when she finished her shift at Paulette's house and got back in her car, and finally made the call she had been thinking about for 3 months. Simone picked up on the first ring. "It's not Sunday," Simone said, which was how Simone answered calls outside the established pattern, not alarmed, just noting it. "I know," Gloria said. "I just wanted to tell you something." A pause. "Is everything okay?" "Everything is fine," Gloria said. She meant it. "I wanted to tell you that my rate changed. A few months ago. I've been working through the math." "Your rate?" Simone stopped. "Like your pay rate?" "Yes." Another pause. Gloria could hear the quality of her daughter's silence, the kind that means she is computing something quickly, the way she had done since she was small. "How different?" Simone said. "About $7 an hour. It was reclassified." A long pause this time. "Mom," Simone said. "I know." That Simone stopped. Then, "That's 8 months of groceries." "I know." "That's a dentist." "I know," Gloria said. "I have an appointment next Tuesday." A short silence, and then Simone said something that was less of a word than a sound, the sound of a person who has been holding something for a long time and has just been allowed to set it down. "I'm going to go," Gloria said. "I just wanted you to know." "Okay," Simone said. "Okay. Call me Sunday." "I'll call you Sunday." She hung up. She sat in the car. The fan on the visor was not running. The February morning was cool enough that she didn't need it. She pulled out of the parking spot and turned south on the highway. There was a Tuesday appointment. 8:30 in the morning, a dentist's office near Little 5 Points that had taken her insurance on the phone without a long conversation about it, which had been a pleasant surprise. She had put it in her calendar. She would be there. The molar on the lower left was going to require a conversation. She had known this for 4 years. She was ready to have the conversation. She drove home. On the last Saturday in March, she went to visit her mother at the care facility in Decatur. She did this once a week, had done it for the last 4 years, every Saturday between 10 and noon. She brought whatever Rosetta was eating well that week. Lately, it had been tangerines. Rosetta was in the sunroom when she arrived, in her chair near the window. She turned when she heard Gloria come in. Her left side was still slower than her right. The stroke had settled into that arrangement and had not moved from it, but her expression was clear, which was what mattered. "You're early," Rosetta said. "I am," Gloria said. She sat down in the chair across from her. She set the tangerines on the table between them. Rosetta looked at them. "I got a pay raise," Gloria said. Rosetta looked up at her. "A few months ago. I've been working through what to do with it." She paused. "I wanted to tell you. In person." Rosetta was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How much?" $7 an hour more. Reclassified. Rosetta nodded slowly. She picked up one of the tangerines. She turned it over in her hand. "Did you ask for it?" she said. "No." Rosetta nodded again. She set the tangerine back on the table. She looked at it for a moment. "Your client," she said. It was not a question. "Someone who knew him," Gloria said. "I think." Her mother looked at her. "You did the work," Rosetta said. "I did the work," Gloria agreed. They sat for a while. Rosetta peeled a tangerine, slowly, working around her left side. Gloria did not offer to help. Rosetta had been clear, many times, about which things she wanted help with and which things she did not. Outside the sunroom window, the facility's garden was beginning to come back, the early things, the ones that came up before anyone expected them. There was a dogwood near the fence that had been bare for months and was now faintly pink at the edges. "The one Simone keeps the picture of," Rosetta said, without preamble. Gloria looked at her. "What?" "On her desk. The picture of me." Rosetta peeled a section of tangerine and held it out. "She told me about it. Said she keeps it so she can see me when she studies." Gloria took the tangerine section. "I know," she said. "She's a good girl," Rosetta said. "She is." Rosetta was quiet. She peeled another section. "You raised her right," she said. "Whatever you had to do to get through it, you raised her right." Gloria sat with this. She did not say anything. She ate the tangerine section her mother had given her. Outside, the dogwood did what it was doing slowly, quietly, without being asked. After a while, Rosetta said she was tired. Gloria helped her back to her room. She got her settled, said goodbye, kissed her on the forehead the same way Marcus Whitfield had kissed his father before driving back across town. She went out to the parking lot. She sat in the Accord for a moment. The fan on the visor was off. She left it off. She thought about something she had not thought about in a while: the parking lot at Grady, a Thursday afternoon, a watch on the ground near a rear tire, the drive back to the hospital, her mother's hand on her shoulder, not guiding her, just present. She started the engine. She pulled out of the parking lot and turned toward the highway. It was noon. She was off until Monday. She had a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday her own hours, the few she kept for herself. She would call Simone at 7 tomorrow. She would go to the dollar store on Metropolitan Parkway sometime this week and buy a new composition notebook. She was most of the way through the second one for Paulette, and she liked to have the next one ready. The highway opened up ahead of her. The afternoon was cool and clear, the dogwood light of early spring, the color of an Atlanta sky, when it's not quite warm yet, but the threat of winter is over. She drove. On a Wednesday morning in April, she arrived at Paulette's house and did what she had been doing for 4 months: key from the planter. In through the front door, nightlight on in the hallway. Dining room, check. Paulette was sleeping. Coffee started. At 6, Paulette woke. "Morning," Gloria said, from the kitchen doorway. "Morning," Paulette said. She sat up carefully. She had gotten good at this. The hip was mostly healed. They were talking now about what the transition out of the hospital bed would look like, when she would go back to her own bedroom on the second floor, whether the stair rail needed adjustment. "What's today?" "Wednesday. The therapist comes today." "At 10. Paulette nodded. She accepted the coffee. She looked at Gloria. "My daughter thinks I don't need you anymore," she said. Gloria sat in the chair by the bed. "What do you think?" she said. Paulette sipped her coffee. She considered this with the seriousness she gave to most things. "I think I need you until I'm up those stairs and sleeping in my own bed again," she said. "After that, probably not." "That seems reasonable," Gloria said. "I told Renata that. She said she'd talk to the agency." "Okay." Paulette set the coffee down. She looked at her hands for a moment. "You'll have other clients," she said. It was not entirely a question. "I will," Gloria said. Paulette nodded. They sat in the quiet of the early morning, the coffee going cool, the light coming through the window in the way it came in April, longer now, more deliberate, the kind of light that has decided to stay. After a while, Paulette said, "I've been thinking about what you said, the first day." "What did I say?" "That people heal better when they're not bored." Gloria waited. "I think that's true of more than healing," Paulette said. She did not elaborate. She picked up her coffee. Gloria did not elaborate either. She opened her notebook. "Shall we do the exercises?" she said, "before the boredom sets in." Paulette laughed. She handed Gloria the coffee to set aside. The exercises took 40 minutes. The physical therapist would come at 10 and have opinions about the progress, and the opinions would be good ones, and Paulette would accept them with the same measured dignity she brought to everything. Renata would call at noon. The afternoon would be quieter. Before Gloria left at 2, she would straighten the nightstand, the water glass, the remote, the pill organizer, and she would pick up her bag and go to the entryway, and she would take the key from the hook where Paulette now kept it, and she would put it in the planter outside, and she would pull the door shut. On the hook beside the front door, an umbrella, Paulette's coat, a canvas bag from a grocery store that had been hanging there long enough that it had become part of the doorway. She would not touch any of them. They were not hers. She would go out. The door would close. The street would be doing what streets do in April in Atlanta, warming up, the trees making their way back to themselves, the neighbor's dog running its commentary along the fence. She would get in her car. She would start the engine. She would not look back at the house. She would drive to the dollar store on Metropolitan Parkway, and she would buy the next notebook, and she would have it ready for 5:30 the next morning. She would be there.